Hi, everyone. Hi. May I ask the readout, those giving readouts to please sit in the front row? Thank you.
Are you getting sheets printed?
Yep.
Can you give me one as well?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I always forget. Yeah, no, good advice. All right.
So did we get a card for Bob Frankston? I have a marker. All right, I'm going to go here.
kind request to the session readouts to sit down at the table so that they can start for the session. Thank you.
Olá. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we now resume the meeting and I open this afternoon's session, a dialogue on zero rating and work neutrality. I'm looking forward to our discussion on these topics. This afternoon, we will engage in an informed and balanced dialogue on the complex Internet policy issue of zero rating. The purpose of this interactive session is to help others in their respective countries and locales in their own analysis of zero rating. The session will promote access to expert insight and multi-stakeholder community discussion and hopes together a complete diversity of views across stakeholder groups and perspectives. There are many different viewpoints on zero rating, with some stakeholders being completely against the practice to others being fully supportive. The session will consider the full spectrum of views. In the case where zero rating is advanced as means to drive Internet access and narrow the digital divide, this session will also explore alternative approaches, such as the use of community networks. Finally, we will also cover issues derived from the workshops through discussion with workshop organizers. In order to manage this session, there will be 3 moderators to ensure expertise and facilitation of the dialogue. I thank you all for joining us here this afternoon, and in particular thank all our distinguished speakers for being here with us. We also look forward to hearing the views of the remote participants. Our moderators this afternoon are Robert Pepper, Vice President Global Technology Policy, Cisco. Remote moderator, Ginger Peik, Director Internet Governance Programs, Diplo. Floor and Readout Moderator, Carolina Rossini, Vice President International Policy, Public Technology and Floor and Readout Moderator. Vladimir Ryadunovic, Director E-Diplomacy and Cybersecurity Programs.
Thank you very much. And everybody, welcome to what I expect is going to be a very exciting session. We have a lot of speakers. We actually have 5 different sessions already on zero rating in one form or another. And as a result, we're going to have readouts from those 5 sessions. And so we're lucky that we're coming today because there's a lot of content that we already can get. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Because it is such a full agenda, and I was joking earlier that because I'm from Cisco and I'm a neutral router, so I'm going to be really sort of routing traffic in a very neutral way, but keeping time and keeping the conversation going. We're going to start with the 5 readouts, and each of the presenters from the other sessions will each have 2 minutes. We then have 4 sessions, four mini panels. The first is going to focus on looking at research on zero rating. The second is going to be looking at different definitions, what people mean by zero rating. Third will be views from the different national views of zero rating. And then finally, the last session will be looking at benefits and harms of zero rating. The expert panelists will each have 3 minutes. We have a timekeeper who's going to be pretty rigid, is going to help me. And when the time is up, he's going to start tapping at the microphone. And we have a clock here for everybody. We also, at the end of each of the sessions, except the national views, national perspectives, we obviously want a lot of time for the audience, for you, for the participants. This is not about people talking at or to you. This is about a conversation involving everybody in the room. So to just very, very briefly try to set the scene, I remember last year in Istanbul at IGF we had what I thought was actually a very good session on zero rating, and there were a lot of different points of view. It was terrible, it was good. People were saying what we really need to do is make sure that we connect people who are not connected, as you just said, which is extremely important. Other people said the problem is that it can lead to lock-in monopoly behavior. It could the costs could outweigh the benefits. There's a beginning of some research looking at the impact of zero rating and then how it interacts with principles of net neutrality. And there really are 2. Again, I've already mentioned that the really 2 areas for the people who advocate using zero rating. It's really designed to solve one of 2 problems, and both of them are related to connecting the unconnected. And one of the things that we know is that when you ask people why they're not connected to the internet, there's a group that it's not no access, right? We've had really good sessions. We had one yesterday on connecting the next billion. There were other sessions with the small, island countries earlier on how do we connect people, get them access if they don't have it. But then when you look at where people have access but do not subscribe, they're not online, it's usually for one of 2 reasons, and actually it turns out 3. And there's research here in Brazil that points to these. In Brazil, by the way, about 90% of people have access to a 3G connection, which is kind of a basic, beginning real broadband. About 20-some% say that of those who have it available who do not subscribe, say they can't afford it. But 70% of the people can tick off multiple reasons. 70% of the people who could have it but don't subscribe say they don't see the value in the internet. They don't think it's important. They don't understand the value to them. And then there's another 70, the people tick off 70%, they don't have the skills or capacity. So there's a group of people who say we can have zero rating to lower the cost to address the price issue. And then there are people who say, but you know what, if we can get people online so they appreciate the value of the internet, then they'll convert to regular subscribers and that will help people get connected. So it's an awareness issue. So cost and awareness are the 2 positive benefits that people use to justify and say zero rating's great. But on the other hand, there's a lot of concern that, depending upon the structure of a zero rating package, it's not the full internet. It's a subset of the internet. It's not really the internet. And by the way, it could lead to lock-in. It could lead to anti-competitive behavior. It could mislead consumers. It could prevent people from going where they really want to go on the internet. So, you know, there are very legitimate concerns and there are very legitimate aspirations for benefits. And so what we're here today to do is provide a little light. There'll be a little heat, but a little light on this debate. So the first session, the first part of this is going to be about research, because over the last year there have been a number of researchers and affiliated with universities and other research institutes that are going to begin to look at some of those research questions. But first we're going to go to our readouts from the 5 sessions that we've already had on zero rating as it relates to net neutrality or just net neutrality to help set the context. And we're going to start with the readout from workshop 156, Zero Rating and Net Neutrality Policies in Developing Countries, and that's Paz Peña. Paz?
Thank you. The conversation in the panel was focused in the zero rating services as a tool to provide internet access and how that can affect an open and free internet. For some of the panelists from private sector, public policies should focus on the lack of affordability to get internet access, but also in the lack of interest. For them, zero rating services can help to foster internet demand. They don't want zero rating services as a permanent situation, but as an entry level for people offline. But zero rating must be done under specific rules to prevent distortion of competition through relationships in the whole digital ecosystem. As the Wikipedia Foundation representative said, zero rating services are not about right or wrong, but a matter of responsibility. For other panelists from civil society, the principles of Internet are the ability to connect, create, consume, and contribute. The need to connect the next billion doesn't mean we should sacrifice those principles, creating a false version of the Internet. In a context where Internet is becoming more corporatized, zero rating services strengthen that worrying trend. Finally, seeing zero rating as a solution for the access problem is going to remove incentives to find other solutions to provide a wider internet access. Thank you.
Thank you, and you were within time. Great. Access protest event on zero rating. Josh?
Hello. On Tuesday, a group of 10 academics, advocates, and companies presented research and product highlights at a public show and tell about zero rating and net neutrality. It was one of the first times such a broad body of work regarding zero rating had been presented and discussed. Research presentations included insight into the many different kinds of zero rating mobile services offered by top global operators, varying definitions of zero rating as seen through the varying offerings from providers, data on the widely varying costs of data in single countries and across the world and how it affects users who are using zero-rated offerings. Discussion of the effect of data caps on users in developing countries, especially those that don't invest in fiber optic networks. Discussion of how operators offer free access to services like Facebook, WhatsApp, and Viber, a practice that many believe violates net neutrality. Differing frameworks we can use to view zero-rating practices, including human rights, consumer rights, competition law, and innovation policy. The challenge many users equating Facebook with the internet. Zero rating being a reality in developing countries since at least 2009, if not before that. Differing user perspectives on zero rating. Some think that access, even limited access, is good, and others think that access to only one or selected content providers would be harmful. And the need to distinguish between theoretical harms and real harms. We finally all agreed that we all need more data.
30 seconds.
And finally, the product presentations included outlines from Facebook about the Free Basics program and data on adoption and conversion rates in that program. Questions about the difference between Facebook and its various products came up, including its privacy policy regarding Free Basics and concerns about Free Basics being a so-called walled garden. And finally, we had descriptions of Mozilla's Firefox OS rollout in partnerships with Grameenphone and Orange, and its work to integrate content creation with connectivity.
With 2 seconds left. Great, thank you. Luca Bellet from the Dynamic Coalition on Net Neutrality.
And I'm also a researcher at the Center for Technology and Society at Fundação Getúlio Vargas. So at the Dynamic Coalition, we discussed the contribution to the annual report of the Dynamic Coalition that is also included in part 3 of this book, Net Neutrality Compendium. There were, in an initial regulatory perspective, so we had the perspective of the Norwegian regulator stating that in Norway, as in other countries in Europe, the zero rating is considered as a practice that determines positive discrimination and that favors specific applications. So it is not considered as compatible with net neutrality, which is a non-discrimination principles. And the goal of net neutrality is indeed to avoid fragmentation and to foster a platform that is open to communication and innovation. And according to the Norwegian regulator and also other regulators, this is not compatible with zero rating practices. The second point was how consumers evaluate zero rating. And so the replies presented in a study were quite heterogeneous. We have consumers that the replies vary according to the data cap. So if the data cap is low, consumer may appreciate and they may have a benefit. If the data cap is high, they are not really interested. So the problem is that this may lead to operators keeping the data caps artificially low to sell a zero rating offering. Subsequently, there were some policy suggestions on how to keep zero rating an exception that could be compatible with net neutrality, considering zero rating as a short-term exception and providing zero rating on free, reasonable and non-discriminatory conditions. And finally, the goal of zero rating that has been presented by many supporters is to foster connectivity. So this has been challenged as a statement, and it has been argued that rather than using zero rating, it would be more sustainable to use community networks and to empower people. Thank you.
Thank you, Luca. Ray Ochink from the Small Island session, please.
Yes.
This morning.
Yes, this morning we had a very vibrant and sometimes very provocative session around this complex issue, widening it to the concept of free internet and not just on zero rating. And the question around who pays for the internet and what the concept of the free internet really meant was a recurring theme throughout the discussion. And it was important to understand whether the discussion was about the infrastructure, the applications, the monetary contributions of users, and so on. And the group agreed that there was a need to discuss each aspect as it related to the overall objective of being able to derive the maximum benefit for small economies. Several of the panelists referenced the many varied models that are being used across the world to fund the rollout of infrastructure and reduction of costs in underserved areas. And it was agreed that a focus on innovative solutions would be necessary to resolve this issue unique to small island developing states. Expressions of concern as to whether implementation of free internet and zero-rated services at present in the Caribbean region were really resulting in any economic and social benefit to citizens of these nations. There was also an interesting discussion around the individual components as a system of levers that need to work in tandem in order to achieve this objective, and describing the reducing cost of access, improving robustness of infrastructure, and stimulating local content as individual levers with different stakeholders that do not always work in a seamless way or at the pace we would like to see was some of the discussions inside of that. But the general discussion was around the imperative of the synchronization of these various components of the internet so that these levers can be identified and manipulated within our own unique economies. Finally, there was a unanimous agreement that there needs to be an expansion of stakeholder involvement with a strong focus on non-technology players, civil society and academia. Collaboration was key to getting the agenda pursued so that the overall desired objective of our SIDS states can be realized.
Thank you. And then the last readout from Antonio Preto from ACCOM in Italy was the session on zero rating, open internet, and freedom of expression.
Thank you. The workshop titled Zero Rating, Open Internet, and Freedom of Expression will take place tomorrow 9 o'clock in room 8.
So this is an advertisement for people
Yeah,
to go.
this is exactly an advertisement.
Okay.
The aim of the workshop will be to consider the impact of zero rating plans on the open nature of the internet, on net neutrality, on freedom of expression and inclusiveness. Notably, we will aim to understand zero ratings effect on socio-economic development. We will explore all the different sides of this crucial debate, focusing in particular on zero ratings effect on competition in our telecoms markets, on consumers' behavior, and on internet governance. Our panel will also attempt to evaluate the effectiveness of the current regulatory trends, where regulators assess zero rating plans on a case-by-case or market-by-market basis. The workshop's panel is uniquely well-positioned to achieve these aims. It is exceptionally diverse, consisting of regulators, academics, international organizations, and private sector actors from all over the world.
30 seconds.
Our final objective is an enriching exchange of views with the full participation of our audience. As a telecom regulator, I know firsthand how difficult it is to get it right and regulate zero rating effectively so as to preserve both net neutrality and a vibrant market in the interest of consumers. That's why I am delighted to have the chance to moderate this exchange of ideas. Join us for this workshop tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock in room 8.
Thank you. That's a great advertisement. And actually, you may be able to take some things from today's session and build them into tomorrow's. So, we're now going to move right into, so by the way, one of the things that I took away from all the readouts, and I think, Josh, you put it really well, which is we actually need some more facts, and actually we need to understand impacts. And so we now have begun to have research looking into this. So we're going to start with the research panel. Each of the experts has 3 minutes to present their expert views. So if we can change the clock to 3 from 2, that'd be great. And then when the speakers start the clock. We're going to start with Dr. Sylvia Olaf Calderwood, Research Fellow at Oxford Brookes University, also working in Peru as well as the UK. Okay. Sylvia, please.
Yes, thank you. As I said at the beginning of the session, there is a call for having data. What I want to summarize very briefly in these 3 minutes is the result of research that I have been doing in collaboration with a colleague in Denmark and research funds from the Danish Research Council, where we have been looking to the issue of zero rating from 3 angles: the issue of competition, the issue of innovation, and the issue of the financials. In particular, we had approached this from looking to very serious questions about who are the people, who are the companies out there that implement the zero rating solution. Our work that has been first an overview of many countries in Africa, Latin America, and in Asia, and 3 case studies in Chile, Netherlands, and in Slovenia, where in particular there has been some confrontation in the issue of zero rating, had pointed out to 2 major conclusions. These conclusions are that when there is a ban in zero rating, it normally hurts the local startups and small operators because they are the ones that actually implement first zero rating. It's not the incumbents, the one that use this service to differentiate themselves in the market of companies, of people that are trying to access for the first time the internet. And there are many examples of this. We have Chile Virgin Mobile, we have Slovenia TUS Mobile, Slovenian Content, etc. The second thing that is interesting for us is that when we reduce the lowest price offers in the market, top price offers get more data, but that only helps the experienced elite user. And we have to ask the question then, what are the options that we are letting to the new user, the one that has not experienced the internet? Should we make them wait for a long time before you get it right, or just giving them some kind of access? So what do we need to do to maximize the coverage? Perhaps one of the things that we have to do is to get our assumptions right. And we have to understand first, that this multi-stakeholder model with its complexity is very much created on an American frame of understanding of the internet. And we have to go and know locally what's going on before we try to impose that frame out there. To conflate zero rating with net neutrality is perhaps to extending too much the concept. It's a marketing tool. In many of the countries where this service is provided, it's just a way for small operators that are first entering the market or establishing themselves to differentiate in the pricing. Finally, I think that we need more data. We need more studies that are more serious, that we look about the differentiation. I heard in the session in Access, for example, this discussion about how people cannot differentiate between the internet and Facebook. I would say, is this the fault of the actual use of zero rating, or is it a way that how the companies market that product? So I think we should differentiate between the two. Our early preliminary conclusion, because we still are ongoing in this work and this research, is that zero rating should not be banned. The effect is that less than 1% of the market out there is using it.
I'm sorry, your time is up.
And we should continue exploring and finding more about the data.
Thank you. Thank you, Sylvia. Palani Galpaya, who's at, I've never quite known how to pronounce Linear Asia, but it's a research institute in Sri Lanka. And they've been doing a lot of work over the years on a lot of issues. So, Elena.
In emerging Asia, this is a really relevant phenomenon, and because most of our users are coming online on mobile phones, and zero rating in the mobile environment is important. We live in an environment where we have some of the cheapest blended prices for voice and data in the world, according to most rankings. We have met at a macro level the 5% target set by the Broadband Commission in terms of affordability, and we have roughly 20% of our people online, so we have a long way to go. And this is 15 to 20 years after deregulation, high competition, and 5 or more years since our government started throwing billions of dollars trying to get people connected. In surveys of people at the base of the pyramid, when we ask them why you don't use it, the top reason in Asia is I don't need it, or I don't see the need for it. It is not affordability and not availability of the signal. In this question, the first question, obviously, in this context, the first question is zero-rated content a phenomena that drives people to adopt a form of connectivity that is beyond the traditional SMS and voice? The answer seems to be cautiously yes. For example, in 2015, the nationally representative sample survey in Myanmar showed that when offered, zero-rated Facebook had a 49% adoption versus 17% for the whole population as a whole, and Wikipedia 8% zero-rated versus 5%. So of course, if it's free, people will use it. Then the next question is, but is it an on-ramp to the internet? Now here is the biggest hole in data that we have. Repeated and public statements by Facebook is the only data we have where they quote a 50% of consumers who use free basics become paying consumers within 30 days. And I think the biggest help in this debate can come if Facebook sheds light on how this number is calculated, for example. In our separate conversations with operators, telecom operators who do offer zero-rated content, and this is anecdotal because it's not systematic, but they say that the conversion rate is acceptable, meaning as rational, profit-maximizing players in a market, it is worth it for them to keep subsidizing the free connectivity because people do convert to the full internet and become paying customers. The next question, do some of them still stay inside the walled garden? Well, of course they do. So when they are inside this walled garden, like Facebook, what do? We know from evidence that they organize themselves politically. They run political campaigns like they did in Myanmar leading up to the elections that ended on Sunday. We know from our research on gender that there are, for example, hairdressers who find out about hairstyles of celebrities because this is what their customers demand. There are people who contact other people and occasionally get a job. Evidence from Africa is that the social media platforms like Facebook Zero are used to communicate with existing networks of friends and family, because other ways of communicating, SMS, voice, are much more expensive. So it's acting as a substitute. What is the value of such interactions in relation to the possibly large volumes of such interactions, meaning job-related interactions? We don't know. Do some users think Facebook is the internet? Yes. But is it related to zero rating? We don't know.
So, yeah, time's up. So, do you want to just finish the sentence?
Yeah, will people find zero rating content attractive when they have other alternatives? This is the biggest question we have, and we don't know that. The expressed harms are hypothetical or mythical, and we don't have the basis for policymaking at this point.
Thank you. And the last researcher, Dhanaraj Thakur from the Alliance for Affordable Internet, looking at some of the work that the A4AI has done.
Thank you. So I briefly want to talk about a research project we started recently. The objective is to use empirical research to determine how service-specific data plans, zero-rated data plans, and other new types of services impact on internet affordability in developing countries. And in so doing, inform policymakers about the best ways to address these emerging services. From the outset, I'll acknowledge that affordability is one part of the access question, but a very important part. So the first part of our project looked at the availability of different kinds of mobile data services across 8 countries, 3 in Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, and Kenya, 3 in Asia, Bangladesh, Philippines, and India, and 2 in South America, Colombia, and Peru. So we reviewed all the plans that are offered by the top mobile phone carriers in all 8 countries, and we came up with a four-level kind of classification system, typology. The first category was what we'd call a full cost data bundle, where you can basically pay the advertised price for data and use that data for in whatever way you wish. The second is what we call a service specific. So here, often the user is able to purchase data at a discounted rate, but can only use the data on specific kinds of sites or apps. The third is what we call earned data, where the user receives data in exchange for performing some kind of action. This might include completing surveys or other marketing kind of services on certain apps. And then the fourth is what we know as zero-rated data, where services are made available for specific set of content or websites at no additional cost to the consumer, but the data can only be used for access to those types. So based on our review, what we found was that service-specific plans are available in all countries we examined, except for Kenya and Ghana. In Kenya, proportionally zero-rated plans were most frequently observed out of all these countries. Zero-rated plans exist in all countries, but there's a wide range. For example, in Nigeria, there's only one operator that offers a zero-rated option. And the earned data option, which is perhaps the most innovative, was only available in 3 of the countries and was the least frequently observed. Across all countries, if we look at all the plans, 51% would be classified as service-specific. A third were full cost, and only 13% were zero-rated. So the majority were service-specific, where you buy data often at a discounted rate, but could only use it on specific sites. So in terms of our next steps, what we want to do is use this framework now and apply it to inform a set of user surveys in the 8 countries that I just mentioned. Surveys of mobile phone users in all 8 countries to understand from the user's perspective some of the key questions that we have already heard, things like the conversion rate, to what extent do these models impact provision of local content, what are the alternatives to existing models of data services that could help drive greater internet adoption, particularly among low-income groups and other excluded groups. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We're now going to go to the floor. We have Vlad and Carolina are the floor moderators, so if there are questions, please go to the mics. And what we'll do is we'll probably end up taking several questions and then have people respond to those. And the time limit for the people on the mics is 90 seconds. So if we could change the clock to 90 seconds, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Or a minute 30 on this, right?
In the meantime, it would be good to, at this part of the session, focus on the topic of this part of the session, which is actually the research and findings and whatever we know about. So I kindly ask you to cue the microphones, and for all the online participants to cue the online space as well. Ginger is there to help us include the online participants as well. In the meantime, I wanted to quickly check with all of you how many of you actually have a zero rating package. How many of you have a mobile package that includes zero data of Facebook or Google or any other? Can you raise your hands, please? Okay, I would say maybe a fourth-fifth of the room. This gives us some idea. Okay.
More of you have, but you might not know is zero rating.
or they don't want to say.
Or you don't want to say.
Over
If
to
you
you,
could bring
Carol.
the lights up in the room, yeah, that's great, so people can see each other. Thank you. Okay, we have about 5 minutes for the floor questions.
We're going to do some ping pong between the mics, so please form the lines. We're going to start on this side and we're going to move to that side. So please introduce yourself and make your question. How many times? How long? It's 90 seconds. 90 segundos, eu te aviso.
Good afternoon. My name is Renata. I'm from Brazil. I'm from National Forum for Democracy of Communication. We think that net neutrality issues should be analyzing regarding the crucial document, which is result of the Net Mundial meeting that makes clear the public character of the internet access in its relation with human rights. We defend that zero rating during available period of data bundle not necessarily violates neutrality. Still, there may be violations of competition law and consumer rights. But in the end of data cap, the provision of exclusive apps and the interruption of internet access represent illegal discrimination and blockage. We defend that essential services imply principles that guarantee the continuity, standards of quality, security, and universalization. In other words, that should be available to every citizen regardless their social classes with a minimum standard of quality. The work of civil society on net neutrality is important because the governments in various countries in Latin America, Asia, and Africa are omitted for being convenient with business plans and projects that treat net neutrality like zero rating and internet.org. However, this kind of practice on the false justification of connecting poor citizens can bring some sort of a reduced benefits in short term. But in a medium and long terms, this will damage the development of the market by the lack of encouraging public and private investments and the commitment of competition and innovation.
Thank you. So, yeah, Vlad mentioned that what we'd like to do, and I appreciate the statement, and I think that it's really important, but there will be other opportunities for statements. This is really a session that we want questions on the research. There'll be a lot of opportunity for people to make statements. And also, if the timekeeper could change the time on the clocks, that would be great. That would help us as well.
Pessoal, por favor, coloca 1 minuto e meio aí atrás pra gente aqui no monitor, por favor.
So to add to what Robert said, we will, in the next parts, we'll also discuss different types of zero rating. We'll discuss national approaches. We'll discuss harms and benefits. So there'll be other space for other comments. Try to be tweet-like. So try to provide tweets. Try to give space. And I encourage different people from different countries, regions, and stakeholders to queue. So should we go? Don't forget to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Baron Soka from Tech Freedom, and I actually have a question. Since the topic here is research, I'm curious for Luca and anyone else. Luca, you suggested that it was more sustainable to use community networks than to use zero rating to make broadband and internet access more affordable and to increase awareness. What evidence do you have that having the government build broadband or internet networks is more affordable, more sustainable, more viable than the current practice of zero rating, which has already clearly succeeded in the marketplace at reducing prices? It's something that consumers actually prefer. So do you have any evidence that having government build internet access is actually sustainable, or are you simply providing your own personal policy preference without actually having any evidence?
Yeah, before Luca responds, let's get a bunch of the questions so we can then get a bunch of responses, quick responses. Thanks.
Por favor, aqui esse lado. Go on, Luca.
Hello. My name is Lucas Teixeira. I work for Coding Rights of the Civil Society. My work is more technical, involving privacy and surveillance. And from what I've seen in Internet.org's technical specs, the way they implement it is either building a proxy that filters traffic, and for it to work, you have to inspect the traffic to know that it's going to the service that is allowed, or building right in the software that you use on your phone or on a computer, technologies like DRM, Digital Rights Management, which are known to be harmful for people. They transform people into adversaries, and they disallow the use of free and libre software completely, because you have to do like proprietary blobs and pieces of code that can be inspected. And I'm curious for how would zero rating work without these kind of harmful technologies. Thank you.
Should we go on? Do we have any comment from remote space, from our online participants? Not yet. Where is Ginger? Ginger, where are you hiding? Ah, over there. Nothing yet, thank you. Signal if you have. Go on.
Hi. In order to be able to get them in, maybe we can have shorter questions. That way we can close the mic lines now, because we're going to be going over. So if we have short questions from everybody who's at the mic, so the lines are closed, and then we'll come back to the panel. Thanks.
1 minute 30. 1 minute 30. 1 minute and a half. So, hi, I'm Paulo Renan from Beta Institute for Internet and Democracy. And I would like to ask, since we're talking about fundamental rights, if you could approach net neutrality as equality, as a fundamental right of equal treatment for the internet ambient. And therefore, if any people in the table have any concrete data on anywhere where the market had provided equality, talking about concrete data, just as was asking for Baron Soka. If you're believing the market could provide equality, or the market can provide only a lower price, and not actually equal opportunities for people to download or even upload information. That's it. Thank you.
Robert, I guess you're taking the notes of the questions. Before I pass it to Carol, we have online participants over there. So Ginger, can you take over, and then Carol, you can go into your line.
Thank you very much. I have an intervention from Amrita Chowdhury of CCAIO India, which is a non-profit organization of telecoms and other providers. She asks, my question is if you can share any empirical evidence to support zero rating creating a walled garden. Thank you.
Obrigada, Ginger. Thank you, Ginger. So here on our side, Flavia Lefebvre. Please introduce yourself, Flavia.
I'm Flavia Lefebvre from Protest Consumers Association, and I'm representative of civil society in CGI-BR. Regarding the difference we can point between planes of zero rating and internet.org, we think is necessary knows about recent researchers that prove this kind of practices do not represent effective benefits neither to consumers nor to the market, because lead to a false idea of internet and stimulate anti-competitive practices and price increasing. But in the end, we defend that zero rating during However, this kind of recent research proved that this kind of practices do not represent the consequence of this project, as internet.org represent a violation of net neutrality and are really a threat to freedom of expression and to free flow of information. I want to inform that the prosecutors in Brazil yesterday released here a technical note regarding the risks of internet.org represent in Brazil. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Hello, am I audible?
My name is Sharada. I am I'm a graduate student from India engaged in research on zero-rated platforms. I have a question for Dhanaraj. I'm interested in the typology that has been presented by you, but I wanted to ask the question, is there a correlation between the percentage of service-specific packs in specific countries to the number of telecom service providers that are present in these countries? And the reason I'm asking this is because you provided percentage data without giving the number of operators that are within these countries. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert, should we get
Yeah,
back to you
I think
then?
we're going to have to close it because we actually are over our time for this section.
We have another
So-
one. Should we take just the last one?
just the
Yeah,
last
so
one on
because
the
some of
side.
these are statements and not questions, but why don't we do one
These are
last one, please?
Okay, yeah,
Please.
and I'm controlling the time here. Go ahead, please.
These are questions. This is Carlos Brito from Neutrality, Mexico. There's a bunch of frameworks when you can put a zero rating discussion, but one is human rights, for example. And when you want to deal with human rights, you ask some questions in terms of restrictions, and you ask yourself, is it necessary, for example? Is it proportionate? But another question is it ideal? Because there is this debate about if the point is awareness. My question will be, are you researching on why is this the ideal measure? Because we are spending so much time, resources, and discussion resources on this one, and there is I don't know if there is any evidence that this is the ideal tool for awareness. And the second one, there are 12 countries that are negotiating the TPP, and it has in the electronic chapter exclusive content for ISPs deal. So when you have exclusive content plus zero rating, is there any thoughts on this? Is there any research on that?
Thank you. So we had a lot of questions and some statements, and I'm not quite sure how we're going to respond to all of that in the time that we have. But for the researchers, although there's a real quick question for Luca, so if Luca could give a really short answer to the question that was directed to you, I'd appreciate it. Then I'm going to go to the other researchers who actually presented and have them respond to the questions they feel that they have the data or whatever to respond to. Luca.
I will put it very shortly. I never argued that government should build community networks, so the question is not really pertinent. Community networks are built by communities, by people, not by government. It's a tool to empower people, and if you want to know what is my policy preference, yes, that would be my policy preference, to empower people rather than imposing them 2 or 3 applications. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's just go in the same order of the researchers that presented. Now you can, okay, please, Sylvia.
I think that the technical question in relation of how is implemented zero rating is quite a simple one. Many of the operators that are presenting this service are actually using it for very common applications that are social networks, Facebook, WhatsApp, Telegram. And really there is no special requirement, and the traffic that is being seen is basically routing local communications through international networks. I want to say that in relation to demonstrating if there is any reason that to believe that there is a zero rating erection of a walled garden, I have to highlight to all of you that most of the companies that are providing this service are not charging Facebook, are not charging the users. They are, so you want to say it in this way, subsidizing the service. So their expectation is that the users, once they start using the data, they move to more expensive services that they can buy or purchase data. Finally, I think that the question about is it ideal to study this service, this is a business. The companies that are providing the service and mobile operators are trying to increase the number of sign-ups. So it might not be ideal, but for some people it's an introduction to the internet.
Thank you.
There's a question about can markets provide equality? If you mean equality as open internet, that is what supposedly the markets have been doing in Asia. Cheap prices, access to the open internet, and yet very few people are connected. In Africa, what you have is less of a market provision because markets aren't functioning as well as they do in Asia. Markets are not perfect, but they have provided open internet and people are not using it. And is this an ideal tool to study, and should we be studying this? This is the ideal tool. Zero rating exists in the context of other choices human beings have to get online, to communicate, to do other things. Show me feasible other choices, and these can be studied in comparison, or go provide them instead of all of us sitting here and talking about it.
empirical evidence to support zero-rated creating a walled garden, the positives of this. I mean, I already cited this. If you're on Facebook Zero and you're using it as a cheaper substitute, that is, for me, a very positive thing, that you're having more money in your pocket and communicating with people instead of paying more money.
Thank you. And then Donna Rush.
Yes, thanks. So the first thing I respond to is a specific question in regard to what I presented earlier, which was that what we found was that 51% of all the plans we reviewed fall under what we call a service-specific category, where a user will purchase a data pack which can only be used on certain sites. So does it correlate with the number of operators in each country? In other words, if there are more operators in the country, do we see more of these kinds of plans? And actually it does not. It really varies based on the country involved. So I would suspect then that this has more to do with the intensity of competition in the market, and not necessarily the number of operators. But that's a good question we could look at more, because then it could look at the broader issues about competitiveness within the market and what these plans might imply. To go back to not a direct question, but something that was raised throughout, I think, is we should also keep in mind that when we define zero rating in terms of how it's offered in the market, there are different kinds of zero rating packages. Some that focus on one site, or maybe a suite of applications, or some that are very specifically temporary in nature, and some that are not so specific. I think the implications for these are also different, so we should keep that in mind.
Thank you. So we're running about 10 minutes behind, and that's because I think what we need to do is be a little bit more rigorous on our time, but also I really want as much floor participation as possible, so as the trade-off is, instead of 90 minutes, maybe if we can have shorter interventions from the floor, we can still have as many people as possible from the floor. So timekeeper, let's try that in this next round. This section is really going to look at the different types of zero rating and some of the alternatives. So alternatives came up in the last section. First is Kevin Martin, Facebook. Kevin.
Thanks, Bob. And
you need to reset the clock to 3 minutes, please.
Sure. Thanks. And the debate about connectivity is complex and multifaceted, because the problems are complex and multifaceted as well. Facebook wants to see everyone online, and of the 4 billion people today that aren't online, we see them breaking down into 3 large groups. There's about 1 billion people who lack the access to the infrastructure that's necessary to be connected. And Facebook has many programs through its connectivity labs that are designed to try to address that through satellites and UAVs and drones, where we're trying to bring connectivities to remote areas. And there's about 1 billion people that barrier is cost to connectivity. And we've got some programs that are designed to try to lower cost. For example, the Express Wi-Fi program that we've rolled out in some places in India, that are designed to use unlicensed spectrum to try to lower the cost of data connectivity. And then we also see that the largest group of people around the globe that are unconnected are those that Bob mentioned earlier, that really relevance or awareness may become the biggest barrier. Form of basic content that's offered for free. The sites that are involved in the program include news, education, health sites, jobs, government sites, and local content. And all of the sites are limited with bandwidth, have limited bandwidth intensive characteristics. And the key characteristics of the program are 3 that I want to make sure we emphasize today. And number 1 is that it's not exclusive. It's open to any operator to participate on exactly the same terms. It's non-discriminatory. It's an open platform that's open to any site that will meet the same technical characteristics that are required to make sure that it doesn't use up too much bandwidth. And finally, it's free. It's not just zero rated to the end user, but it's free. Facebook doesn't pay the operators to participate, and none of the content sites that choose to participate and design their programs are required to pay it either. And I think that there's 2 overarching, critical, important points that we should put in the context for this debate. And the first is that in Facebook's Free Basics program, that we are trying to listen and respond to the concerns and critics that concerns have been raised. For example, there was concerns about whether or not we were confusing people with the original name of internet.org. And so we've changed the name to make sure that this is not access to the full internet, it's access to a set of basic services, and so we've renamed the program. And we've also just made sure, as I've mentioned earlier, there's an open platform that others can participate in. And we've made other changes in response to the concerns, and so we are trying to listen and be responsive. And the second and final question is this working? Because in the end, that's what's most important in terms of trying to get other people online. And as Josh mentioned in his remarks, we need to end up having more data. And our initial data demonstrates that it is. It's accelerating the rate of adoption. The operators who participate are seeing a 50% increase in the rate of adoption of people subscribing to the internet. And then second, we see a 50% conversion rate. In other words, for the people that try this for the first time, 50% of them become paying subscribers of the internet within 30 days. And we think that's evidence that it is working, and that's what's most important in terms of getting people online. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. And you were within time. Great. Yochai Ben-Avi from Mozilla.
Thank you. So I think we've been talking a lot about sort of connecting the unconnected, but I think we need to ask, what are we connecting to? I think that there's been some discussion of sort of connecting to small parts or corners of the internet, but I think that the North Star for all efforts has to continue to be connecting people to the full diversity of the open internet. And we care about that because we believe the open web and the full web is a greater engine for economic and social development, for education, for opportunity, and for building a world where everyone can create on the web. And so zero rating in different flavors has been offered as a potential on-ramp or means to get there. And while zero rating as currently practiced, as most models currently practiced in the market today, don't raise the same sort of prototypical harms of net neutrality violations in terms of throttling or blocking, we see a lot of concerns around the same kind of anti-innovation, anti-competition concerns. And I don't want to be clear, if we're going to accelerate the rate at which people are connecting, there are definitely parts of the world where we will have to subsidize the cost to user in some fashion. And zero rating provides an opportunity to do that, but we believe that we've only seen sort of a limited set of models right now. And we believe that there must be more and other sort of alternative market solutions to help connect the unconnected to the full diversity of the internet. To this end, Mozilla's launched an initiative we call Equal Rating. And under Equal Rating, we're investing in research that everyone seems to be talking about to help better understand the dynamics at the nexus of internet openness and internet access. Because ultimately we're still missing a lot of data. I think the other thing that we want to do is spark innovation in alternative market solutions that would bring the internet to everyone, also all the internet to everyone. So two ways we're doing this right now. One is a partnership with Grameenphone and Telenor in Bangladesh. Those users can watch a 30-second ad in the marketplace and unlock 20 megabytes of data for free to use on whatever they want. And they can do that once per day. The other sort of really interesting Firefox OS business model we're looking at this sort of issue set with is the Cliff Phone. That's a partnership with Orange and I think about 20 Middle Eastern and African markets. If the thesis is give people a taste of the internet and they'll see the relevance to their lives and sort of demand the full internet, Cliff Phone gives users unlimited talk, text, and 500 megabytes of data a month for 3 to 6 months depending on the market. This is not all we're doing. I know that I'm running short on time. I'll throw in one other plug to say that if we think about there's a lot of more work that needs to be done on infrastructure, on affordability, on incentives, but capabilities is an area where we think there's a lot of untapped potential and a lot of room for exploration. Well, I'll end with an anecdote of a small-scale study we did in Bangladesh as well. We took one group of users and gave them the normal onboarding experience you get when you buy a mobile phone in Bangladesh. And then we gave a test group that same normal onboarding experience plus a 2-hour introduction to the web. What is the internet? What are apps? What is data? How does this all work? We gave them 2 gigabytes of data for free in return for them coming back a month later and showing us what they did with their phones. And we saw about 20% higher data usage in that group that got that additional skills learning. They actually exceeded that free data cap, and they had a greater diversity of websites visited. So I think there's a lot of promise here. Really interested to hear from everyone else. Thank you.
Thanks. That actually, okay, great examples. Steve Song is next, who's the founder of Village Telco. Steve.
Hi. I want to talk today about the regulatory options available in dealing with net neutrality and zero rating. So broadly speaking, regulators have two categories of tools, which we can call sticks and carrots, to get the behavior they want out of the market. And sticks, are punitive. They force operators to do the right thing, if you like, and carrots provide incentives to bring new service providers into the market so that people can self-select away from options that don't serve them well. Now, historically in communication regulation, the carrots haven't worked out that well, because it's very, very expensive to build communication networks, millions, if not billions of dollars to develop these networks. And what I want to say now is that it's changed. And here I'm going to focus on sub-Saharan Africa. The arrival of over a dozen undersea cables around the continent of sub-Saharan Africa since 2009, which has sparked a tsunami of investment in terrestrial fiber and metro fiber projects across the continent, have opened up the possibility of new access options. This, combined with the drop in price of wireless technologies, whether it's unlicensed wireless or dynamic spectrum options or micro GSM services, now the ability of municipalities, of entrepreneurs, and community organizations to define their own access options is available, but are hamstrung to some degree by the unavailability of policies and regulations that allow them to do this. So here, the internet loves diversity, but what we see in access at the access level is a lack of diversity. It is a bit of a mobile monoculture. And so what I'd love to see at the next IGF is, instead of 7 sessions on network neutrality, I would like to see 7 sessions on access diversity.
Good suggestion. Thank you. And you were within time, under time. Bob Frankston, an old friend, I think you're going to talk about something similar. Well, the microphone, please.
I've got a language problem. The word zero rating is a telecommunications term that has nothing to do with the internet. It assumes you've got a relation for each service with each customer. And the problem is, what do you mean by the internet? The dynamic that gave us the internet is based on an entirely different principle. It just makes the middle disappear. You've got two machines that just work together, and all you have between are packets totally decoupled from the application. So how do you even define the concept of a rate? The problem is the telecom and the internet use the same facilities. They're just different ways to use the same facilities. And we got today's internet by tunneling through telecommunications. So the fact that we can repurpose it has given the illusion that the internet is one thing in the pipe called telecommunications. And even to the point there's a retail service. So the telecommunications got this thing called broadband. They zero-rated the television service. They zero-rated phone service because they just included, and they added this thing called the internet as yet another thing they can offer. And that led to the illusion that it's a service you get, but really it's one end of a tunnel through telecommunications. So that's what made it hard to talk about. But so the concept of zero rating is not new. There were 800 numbers. We had numbers for Minitel services. And the fact that it's over IP shouldn't confuse us. Verizon zero rates the video on demand service over Fios, because it goes over IP, and it's just outside my cap. They don't count those packets, but it's the same connection. What we really need to do is, if you want the internet, it's an economic problem. We need to make that just works available, which is why we need communities to fund it as a group. So it's available like sidewalks. You don't zero rate sidewalks, they're just there. So we can use here, so we need to invert the tunnels, whereas right now the internet is tunneled through telecom. Telecom becomes services go over the internet. So I'll skip through this. The point I want to get to is to connect the first trillion devices, not just a billion people. Let's remember, the people connect through devices, but I also want to connect the next million cows in canoes. I want to connect the next billion trees.
30 seconds.
Okay. So there's evidence with our home network. So there's going to be a panel tomorrow on community networking. 2 p.m. should come to that. A version of this is rmf.vc/zero rating, though this talk is a little advanced over that. But basically, the internet is what we create ourselves. Government is just the way we coordinate our efforts. So there's no difference between the community and the government.
Great, thank you. That is actually a great place to end being provocative. Also, this morning you were on this Small Island session talking about community networks as well. So we're now going to go to the floor, but we're going to have to be very disciplined and probably have fewer, just so that we can.
Is 60 seconds okay?
I think we really need to. Let's try 30. I want as many people as possible. So if you could line up at the mics, and if we don't have anybody lining up at the mics, that's okay. But I want to try to get back on track.
Okay, Pepper.
Please.
Let's go. So if you don't want to come to the mic to keep your anonymity or whatever, or if you don't want to just come over here, just tweet your question under the hashtag #ZeroRatingIGF 2015. And I think now we actually have learned and heard that actually there are lots of business models out there that are being called zero rating. And we may have learned that actually not everything impacts, while some other impacts, and some are good for some countries and some might not be good for other countries. But without delay, I think we're going to go directly here to the panelists on this side. Vlada doesn't have anybody on that side, so please introduce yourself and go ahead.
I'm timing this, I hope I do okay. I'm Mike Godwin, I'm with R Street Institute. I've worked with Freedom House and with other organizations in internet policy development. This year I was in Cambodia. We worked to develop internet rights and principles that were nation-based in Cambodia based on the Internet Rights and Principles document. What we discovered is that when we wanted to crowdsource this rights document, we reached out, we created a wiki for it, and people were trying to engage in the wiki, but actually the way that was most productive was when they engaged on Facebook. The Cambodians discovered that they could talk on Facebook and politically engage, and I'd like to hear more that anyone has to say about use of social networks, WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, to engage politically in democracy building and human rights activity.
Carolina, you said I don't have anyone on my side, but I also take the online participation on my side. So Ginger, your turn.
Ginger, any questions?
Yes, thank you. I'm scrolling back up. Alexis Antelis from Caracas, Venezuela, asks if any of the panelists or experts who have spoken think that the applications such as Facebook and Google that are being offered as zero rating are, he used the word sham, remember his native language is Spanish, which might end up confusing the users about what the internet really is. Thank you.
Sure. Go ahead.
Thanks. Giovanna Di Minico, Professor of Constitutional Law, University of Naples, Federico II. In my opinion, zero rating is a very smart, brilliant idea that represents a violation of double regulation with one hit. I be more precise, because the competition law is broken because the content provider who are out of this agreement are of course postergated, so violation of competition law. At the same time is a violation of the net neutrality, because if net neutrality means that the consumer have the freedom to choose what content. Of course, I have a formal freedom, but if the content of Google or of YouTube I can have free, I go there. I don't go to the new competitor. So competition is broken, and also net neutrality. One hit to represent double violation.
Thank you. I would also like to encourage friends from Africa and Asia to come to the microphone. We want to hear all the voices, so please join us in discussion. Carol.
Please go ahead.
Renata from Brazil, civil society.
In countries like Brazil, where there is a lack of infrastructure that left offline millions of people, and mobile devices are their only access to internet, we are agree in connecting people with services that create a second category of citizens.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself.
My name is Arthur. I'm at Strathmore University, but I'm speaking as Arthur. I'm not representing Strathmore today. Because you guys, I think, on the table, most of you are middle class, academics and intellectuals. I think I would appreciate if you were to bring, I think, poorer people who are in those, walled gardens, to give their views as well, to make sure that, their views, that are being presented here are also benefiting from the perspectives of the beneficiaries of the services that, the likes of Facebook are deploying. But secondly, technology, the deployment of technology should also be seen from a development paradigm. Particularly when you're talking of me, I think as an African, there's a concept that we call gradual realization of economic and social rights. So if you give me WhatsApp and Facebook, I think it's a good stepping stone. So why don't you encourage, Facebook, Mozilla and all that, to say, I think what you have done is good. So why don't you build up, to the next step, rather than, I think, killing or destroying what's good or what other people consider as a good service. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we're going to... Thank you.
Pepper.
By the way, so...
I had a request. There was a person in line, but he would like to do his question in Portuguese. Since most of you don't have headphones, we agreed that I could translate.
You translate, okay, but then we're going to have to close the line because we're way over.
Yeah, he was
and I want to be able
already,
yeah, no, that's fine. Please. And then we'll come back to the panelists. Thank you.
It's just one question. Yeah. Sorry, it's already.
Bom, sou Marcos.
My name is Marcos. I'm from Gaivoses, Brazilian Civil Society. First of all, I'd like to say that the Marcos of You is going through many mutilations, changing its principles. There are many principles which are being changed. And when we discuss the topic here, net neutrality, this hasn't been regulated. This has been causing lots of confusion and debates, and we see the market acting and violating a law which was created
Principle that was fought for by the Brazilian society in Marco Civil.
E aí a pergunta que eu queria fazer era o seguinte.
So the question is, do you have any information as to how the net neutrality is being treated in different countries? Also regarding zero rating.
Those that are tweeting, because there are a lot of reports, if you want to pose a question through a tweet, put a word question so that we can be alerted. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, both, if Carolina and Vlad, if you can actually get really close to your microphones when you speak, that would help as well. Okay, we'll start with Kevin, then Yochai, then Steve, then Bob.
So just briefly responding to a few of the points. One was about, were we concerned about the confusion that might be created by this with the internet? And certainly we heard that concern, particularly when the service was referred to as internet.org. So we've changed the name to make sure we try to address that confusion. And I also want to point out that we actually support network neutrality as well. We think it's actually critically important to end up having that, making sure that there's no blocking, no throttling, no paid fast lanes. But we think that has to be consistent with the ability to bring more people online. online in an effective way. And then finally, just in response to the last question, we've rolled out our free basic service of this same zero-rated service in 29 countries around the world, and in those countries there hasn't been a regulatory problem, and in the U.S. and in the EU, where they've adopted strong network neutrality rules, they still do it consistent with the ability to provide zero rating, although it's looked at on a case-by-case basis.
Great, thank you.
So to pick up on a couple of points, when we did ethnographic research earlier this year in Kenya, India, and Bangladesh, we would ask people in some rural villages, have you ever connected to the internet? And they said, no, I don't have my Facebook account yet. And I said, well, have you connected to any other website? There's a lot out there. And they said, no, I don't have my Facebook account yet. And so, we certainly do have concerns around some of that confusion, but I think that what this says actually is Facebook is a hub for a ton of local and relevant content. These are photos and stories about people's, friends and family, and so that's not surprising, but we also know that we need to do more to sort of make that value proposition to certain populations of what the internet has to offer and what it can be, and I think that goes beyond Facebook. I think that we just published a study with Mozilla and the GSMA around the power of the smartphone as a sort of form factor that might help to generate sort of local content in a way that we haven't been seeing before. So I guess that my time is up. Is that what that tapping is? But happy to follow up offline, I guess, with anyone.
Great. Thank you. Steve.
I would just like to emphasize the point that was made by a gentleman from Strathmore, I think, or Strathclyde, and that is that, this is a group of middle class and, above all, connected people, that are, perhaps attempting to make a pronouncement about whether people will be, somehow subverted by something like free basics. I think they have to, we have to give people credit that they will be able to figure that out on their own.
Thank you.
And if you guys don't have enough time...
Finally, Bob.
Okay.
Sorry.
And if you guys don't have enough time to talk, people are asking Twitter for you to also complete your answers in the Twitter. So you are all welcome to do that. It has been requested.
I think there's a problem. We need a whole other discussion on the internet as a dynamic underlying all this. What you're talking about are lots of consequences and lots of related issues. So I think the confusion is actually very deep and something, take a lot more time to talk about. It is basically, if you're familiar with paradigm, I hate to use the term paradigm shift, but I'm stuck with it. The internet is really something new. It's not a thing in itself. It's a byproduct of software and what we're empowered to do ourselves. And this is just touching the edge. So beyond that, that's a longer conversation.
Thank you. And thanks for everybody being really brief and to the point. We're still behind, but we're making a little progress. So now we're going to have views, national views. And actually, we're going to start with Igor de Freitas from Brazil, our host country. Thank you very much for being very gracious and great hosts. And then following that, we have a remote participant from Slovenia. So the tech people in the back should get ready so that when Igor is finished, we can put Dusan up on the screen. Igor, please.
Good afternoon to everyone. It's my first time in IGF. It's been a very good experience. Well, when we, a couple months ago, tried to see together some public entities within Brazilian state, Brazilian government, to discuss the regulation of Marcos Civil, I may confess that zero rating was the most difficult topic to get to a draft ed, to a first draft ed. And that's why there are very, as we see in this session, different concepts of zero rating. And during the discussion, we realized that we went up to a constitutional level, because in Brazilian constitution, freedom of economic activity is real effect. So
of of the Communications Council in Slovenia. Dusan, are you there? Yes. Yes, thank you. Go ahead, please.
So
we can't hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, Slovenia was the second European country that enshrined the concept of network neutrality into its national law in 2012. But soon after the electoral provisions came into force in January 2015, mobile operators offered zero-rated services that included music and video streaming and cloud storage. And we encountered the problem that the ordinary data caps were quite small, while zero-rating products offered much higher data caps, and in some cases also virtually unlimited. Discrimination was huge amongst the users, and also it was highly anti-competitive. So the National Electronic Communications Council examined abusive and illegal business practices in the mobile industry and filed a complaint to the national regulator. The complaint was successful, and the regulator issued the first two decisions banning zero rating in January 2015, and then the rest in the following months. And the effect was surprising, as similarly as in the Netherlands, the mobile operators immediately increased data caps substantially. But unfortunately, the victory may not last. First, the Slovenian operators are highly litigious, and final judicial decisions have been awaited in all four cases. Well, you can see here that operators claim that by the net neutrality provisions, their constitutional rights have been violated, especially the right to freedom of expression, to freedom of economic initiative, while on the other side, the net neutrality proponents claim that other rights have to be considered as well, like the freedom of opinion and expression, the right to confidentiality of written communications, and also the right to protection of personal data. These are the freedoms that you are going to also discuss at the IGF, as I've heard before. Secondly, the Slovenian provisions may be unfortunately overridden by the new European net neutrality regulation adopted by the European Parliament a few weeks ago. The rules are not well defined, and the implementation will depend on the guidelines that has to be laid down by the body of European electronic communications regulators in the coming months, and their implementation later on by national regulators. And another issue that is also very important and that we have experienced in Slovenia, this is a different view.
30 seconds.
How should we regulate zero rating services? Well, we know that operators would like to do that through competition law, but let's see what happened here in Slovenia. Well, we know that these practices are highly anti-competitive, but on the other side, we know that in certain countries, especially in not well functioning markets with weak regulators, competition protection is not very effective. There are examples of abuse of dominant position cases that have been tried in the electronic communications markets, either in member states, including Slovenia, or at the EU level, that have taken 8 years or even more from the date of opening of proceedings to the final ruling. So competition alone is therefore unlikely to be effective to prevent against excessive zero rating practices. According to our experience, there should be ex ante mechanisms for sector regulators to intervene and protect users and competitive service providers against discrimination. So let me conclude. We need clear rules, proactive regulation, and strong regulators. This is based on the experience of Slovenia. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Interesting that one regulator saying it's not ex ante yet, right? And another one saying it has to be ex ante. So again, wide range of views. We now are going to hear on the national situation in Argentina from Eduardo Bertoni, who's at the law school the Palmero University of Law School. Please.
Thank you very much. Actually, I will split my presentation into two areas. First, the situation in Latin America, and I will touch on the situation in Argentina. And B, the two main arguments I find in Latin America when we approach to zero rating. And these two arguments are, first, zero rating is against net neutrality, and second, the zero rating versus access to the internet argument. So the situation in Latin America. Many countries already approved or implemented or are in the process to implementation of zero rating. According to a recent research from Derechos Digitales, those countries are Paraguay, Colombia, Panama, Brazil, Bolivia, Peru, and Guatemala. Those countries might be a good basis for field research on the benefits or problems of zero rating. The rest of the countries did not start yet, as far as I know, any discussion on zero rating. So now I move to what I think there are the two main arguments when people in Latin America oppose zero rating. First argument, zero rating is against net neutrality. This argument is closely related on how we define net neutrality and also on what zero rating is from a technical point of view. Having said that, some laws passed in Latin America on net neutrality do not appear to be an obstacle of zero rating services. But on the other hand, there are examples where the regulation of net neutrality seems to prohibit zero rating. One example is my country, Argentina. The other could be Brazil. In Argentina, the law prohibits the determination of price of internet access in relation with the content, services, protocols, or applications that are being used or offered through the respective contracts. Since zero rating consists in giving access to content with no cost, it could be against the net neutrality regulation in Argentina. If pricing is a matter of net neutrality, those regulations are against zero rating. In Brazil, under the net neutrality regulation in the Marco Civil, there is a duty to process on an isonomic basis the transmission of any data package. If the concept of isonomy means equally before the law, zero rating is against net neutrality regulation. Finally, the second argument mostly used to oppose zero rating. It consists in confusing zero rating services with policies that offer real access to the internet. For me, this problem is more a semantic problem than a real problem. However, the confusion could be used politically for not implementing policies to increase real access to internet. And this is happening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eduardo. I would now like to call for a fourth country view on Ambassador Daniel Sepulveda from the United States. And Ambassador is at the microphone over here where Caroline is. Mr. Ambassador, please.
Thank you very much, Bob. First of all, what I want to say is that I think this is an incredibly useful conversation, and I'm moved both by the participation and the passion being brought to this conversation in this venue. Second, I'm extremely happy that this conversation is taking place here and not on the floor of the United Nations. The idea that we have a conversation that includes issues ranging from technology to economics to ethics to political ideology, and hearing a variety of different views on the relative merits or lack thereof of a specific question as it relates to network neutrality is a very valuable conversation. It's why the IGF was in part created, the ability to come together to, in a civil fashion, share expertise, share ideas, share values, take them home, and then use what you've learned and apply it in whatever manner you deem useful for you and your people. I do want to say, I think that the explanation just recently about the different laws in Latin America and also in Europe relative to network neutrality and how zero rating relates to each of those laws is incredibly important. And what we have to understand is that there are different types of zero rating, and in network neutrality law around the world, including in Europe, in the United States, and in Brazil, there are exceptions allowed for practices that are not complying with network neutrality. And the question for regulators in each of those spaces is it in the public interest to allow this particular exception? And there may be a case where a zero rating program is in the public interest to be allowed, and there may be cases in which it is not. And we don't know that until we have a specific complaint relative to a specific case and the expertise of a regulator to determine whether or not the public interest has been violated. And so I think, generally, regardless of how you feel about any given specific zero rating program, that the process that the world is coming to general consensus on, or at least these three parts of the world, is that network neutrality is good. As a basic principle, we defend it and contain it in our law. And there are cases in which an exception should be allowed. And that to have that case, you need an open dialogue, transparent process, and an evidence-based discussion about the effect it would have both on the internet and innovation at the edge of the internet and on users and their welfare. But the last thing I will say is that we should guard against paternalism in this case. I think I want to go back to what one of our colleagues said, that poor people understand their interests just as well as we do. And the degree to which they can exercise those interests in the market, we should try to enable as much as possible choice and opportunity in the market for them to exercise their capabilities as consumers, while at the same time ensuring that any service that is provided to them isn't their only option and doesn't harm them.
Great, thank you very, very much. Thank you, Ambassador Sepulveda. So this segment did not have about some. We're now going to have 4 experts who are going to dive deep into that. Pranesh, please.
Thank you. Talking about harms and benefits of zero rating is a very difficult proposition, since there are so many different kinds of zero rating, each of which have different kinds of harms and benefits. Therefore, I will present some theoretical considerations rather than making categorical assertions. If one takes zero rating to be the practice of not counting some data traffic towards a consumer's regularly metered data usage, and not everyone does use this definition, then one finds that zero rating can be paid for by the end consumer or and help towards correcting distortions in transit and peering markets. Potential harms: it can be anti-competitive favoring specific ISPs or handset manufacturers. It can be anti-competitive amongst favoring certain content providers. It can harm online openness, diversity, generativity, and innovation at the edges. And I'll just end it there. And these are just some theoretical considerations that people can keep in mind while thinking about that.
Thank you. That was a great list. Pros and cons. Anya Kovacs, who's the director of the Internet Democracy Project in India, you've been involved in these issues for a long time. Please.
Thank you. Ambassador Sepulveda said poor people understand their options and interests as well as we do. That's true. They often do so with far less options available to them than to us, and they understand that very well as well. I can see that there might be short-term benefits to zero rating, but in the absence of very clear data, let's us take a longer historical perspective, looking at issues that might matter for those poor people and determine what the options available to them are. The first question is, what kind of internet do we envision? Even 10 years ago, the internet was a very different beast. Today it is much more centralized, and even for all of us who have access to the full internet, the empowering potential of the internet today is far more mediated by corporations than it was 10 years ago. That didn't happen overnight. We got there step by step, very slowly. If today zero rating would allow practices that actually work against those trends, I will definitely sign up to make zero rating a regular practice. At the moment, though, it looks as if it will set us further on the path of centralization, and especially the massive investments that have been made around free basics in India, very much focusing on the discourse of promoting access rather than awareness, are one indication that it does matter to the big internet corporations, and there will be a reason for that. The second question I want to ask is, what kind of vision do we have for our own societies? In the context of the World Summit on the Information Society review process, I've been really struck by how much talk there has been about how ICTs can support the SDGs, but very little about what kind of access people need exactly to be able to make that empowering potential a reality. Mobile phones might be the first point of access, but that might be part of the problem, not of the solution. If we are not more ambitious today, are we not letting people down? How much will we still work towards incentivizing other options, community networks being one among them? Again, if we look at our historical record in other areas, the record isn't great. In many of our countries, very important services like health and education are already two-tiered. Yesterday, somebody asked me, but you're not saying that government education should be scrapped because it doesn't provide the same quality. That's true, but it should never have been bifurcated in the first place. As many argued, in context of countries like India, it's community-based education that would be the way forward. So the question really is, what incentives are still there to work towards providing access to all of the internet for all of the people, all of the time? If the internet isn't bifurcated to that extent yet, we have an option now to make choices, and let us be careful about examining those options. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Belinda Exelby from the GSM Association. Belinda.
Thanks, Bob. For anyone who's not familiar with the GSMA, we represent the mobile industry worldwide and have over 800 mobile operator members. We've heard a lot this week about different definitions and types of zero rating. So I'll start by clarifying our viewpoint, which is that zero rating is simply a commercial model. It bundles internet access with specific services or content to make it attractive to certain consumer segments. There are similar practices and two-sided commercial models like this in lots of other sectors where they've been established over a long period of time and have been shown to promote competition and to bring economic efficiency and social benefit. Just a couple of examples. Many newspapers are provided free of charge to readers through advertiser funding. In London we have the Metro and the Evening Standard, who both operate on that basis, and they compete fully with paid-for alternatives. And consumers have a choice as to which they would prefer. Similarly, with television services, we see a wide range of consumer choice. Some advertising funded, some subscription funded, and others funded by governments. We see there that the variety of business models and differential pricing benefits both competition and consumers. It's all about consumer choice. My next point is that much of the discussion around zero rating this week has focused on its use in developing countries to encourage internet adoption amongst the unconnected, and that is clearly a benefit, well, certainly from our point of view. But in other markets too, we're increasingly seeing that zero rating benefits consumers in other ways, not just by allowing them to trial a new service without concerns about data consumption charges, but also providing access to promotions, advertising, marketing and so on, without the risk of incurring unwanted or unintended costs. Another benefit of zero rating that we heard about from Sylvia is the way that it supports competition in the content and apps domain by letting new entrants who want to offer those services compete with more established content providers. And they do this by using the marketing and distribution and billing platforms of the network operators that they otherwise wouldn't have access to. And where content providers contribute financially to support zero-rated services through sponsored data models, they're doing this because they recognize the increased value of reaching more consumers, and there's nothing wrong with this as a business practice. And in fact, in the longer term, it's particularly important as we look for ways to extend connectivity, as the more people that content providers and operators have on their platforms and networks, the more incentive they have to invest in expanding them and developing new and innovative services. I'll just conclude by noting that in the long term, it's not clear whether zero rating will be sustainable, as others have said it's a highly complex and competitive market. But in this environment, the key point is that competitive markets and competition law should be sufficient to provide safeguards against anti-competitive behavior. And it's not the job of regulators to prohibit practices that can benefit consumers and create markets for new and innovative services. So the sustainability of zero rating is something that markets and consumers should decide. Thank you.
Thank you. Right on time. And our final expert is Christopher Yu, Professor of Law at the University of Pennsylvania. Christopher.
Well, thank you, Pepper, and thank you for allowing me to participate in such a fantastic event. It is really a privilege to have witnessed such a rich presentation of views. We heard from Ambassador Sepulveda that zero rating is not a unitary phenomenon. We hear from Anya Kovacs how life has changed. At the first IGF, we would be talking about fixed line internet. And in fact, the wireless revolution has transformed the way we have to think about the devices that are used, the limits on the bandwidth, and has enriched the ways, the mobility that it enables, and has enriched things in fantastic ways. Ria has told us about the challenges faced by certain kinds of countries. Small islands and developing states face real challenges. We heard from Rajan Matthews of the Indian operators that if you look at their affordability, the metrics established by the OECD, that equals to $2.50 US per month as an expected revenue, and facing the unique challenges that certain markets face. We heard from Sylvia and Steve that there are differences in networks, and that in fact when you have MVNOs that are new entrants trying to make new services, they cannot differentiate on the network itself or the price, and that in fact they look for new ways to compete. And if you look at the enforcement actions brought by Chile and by Slovenia, they tended to be brought against new entrants, small players, one with 1% market share, who were doing fairly small services, such as cloud-based services, and Virgin Mobile was doing WhatsApp and flat rate, and it's a provider that's committed to flat rates. What we see is, in fact, as Dhanaraj points out, very different models of deployment. We hear that, in fact, zero rating is not the dominant model, that it's service-specific models, and that, in fact, it's not just one app, but, in fact, WhatsApp, Facebook, Wikipedia, Deezer, music services, cloud services are all different parts of this that are rich. And we find that different systems are exclusive or are compensated. We hear from Halani about the importance of the demand side and zero rating, how it can enhance that. In an aging economy, in an aging population, senior citizens are getting different phones. Islamic countries require different phones, if we find out in the research we're learning. And that in fact we've learned that we're seeing a grand experiment in the US. One of the things I'm tracking is some attempts to wire indigenous peoples in the US. And in fact it requires some very different strategies. So the net we hear as a common theme is we need more information. We need more data. It's a young practice. And then the question is, what do we do? Law has a traditional answer. When you're unsure about whether a practice will be beneficial or not, and it has sufficient promise, you should let the experiment continue. That is the tradition of the internet, where the default answer is yes and not no. And we can try to find out what different things, what new great innovations that we have never seen are yet waiting.
Thank you. Right on time. So, what we'll do is we were supposed to be now at the wrap-up, but I really would love to have more interventions from the floor. If we can keep them tight and short, we can get as many people as possible, and then we'll pull them in and then have the panelists respond as we've done in the past. And then I don't know whether people can stay an extra 10 minutes maybe so we can have the final wrap-up, if that's okay. Thank you, please.
My line is longer than your lines, or it's not.
Just remember to keep the mics close to your...
I should, yeah, thank you.
Swallow the mic.
I'll try to. Okay, since we have quite some people around that want to take the floor, please make sure that you actually tweet your words, and the other tweeters can actually transform it. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. My name is Mishi Chaudhary. I'm from New Delhi, India. Zero-rated services we have heard about so far in practice, not in theory. Talk about access and proceed from the point of view most beautifully summarized by our friend, the spy for humanity, one Mr. Edward J. Snowden, who say surveillance is the business model of the internet. We are listening to people talk about how to bring the net to the world's poor on the assumption that privacy is the privilege of the rich, the ones who lived in the jurisdiction of ECJ or wave an American passport. Any effort to present a tiny sliver of the internet to the world's less well-off majority on the false ground that this is all they can afford is in fundamental conflict with any rational policy of social development through innovation. This is something that the citizens from our countries should resent and our government should prohibit as an obstacle to social development. Why few services are better than giving away promotional data, say 100 or 200 MB, which allows users to discover internet for themselves? Why should a content provider or telecom operator choose for them? We keep getting bogged down in these conversations about the neutrality of the net, a term so gloriously indefinite that everybody supports it, but we don't know it. I
Can we
do want to
please
say
summarize?
that
We need a lot of people that want to.
the poor deserve the same sanitation, healthcare, drinking water, primary and secondary education, and network communications of the rich. It is the responsibility of the society to provide them. We like many efforts of the private players, and we will work for them like we do for free speech and expression. 9 of your 10 choices may be good. This one is bad. Drop it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
So
let's
if we're-
move forward.
yeah,
Thank
if
you.
we're going to be able to have everybody speak, I know that was really, well, said, right? But we're going to have to compress it and pretend we are in a 140-character Twitter world, or something very tight. Otherwise, we will not have time for everybody who wants to speak. So please.
And if you can put the 1 minute here so we can see and be sure that we are stopping people at time. I'm going to go to this line here. Introduce yourself, please. And then.
Hello, my name is Amanda. I'm from Brazil and ISOC ambassador. So private investments and initiatives on social interest is always appreciated, and that happens every day in a range number of sectors. And the principles are already here to guide this kind of private intervention in public interest. So my question is, here I see the private sector taking advantage under the scope of accessibility to improve their own business and interests. Why does the private sector insist in finding excuses to it and refuse to provide zero-rating data package to allow the people to choose freely the content to access?
Thank you. Should we move on?
Hi. Hi. My name is Eliana. I come from Bolivia. So it's a country where internet.org or FreeBasic is implementing. And I want to make a point about information. GSMA, it says that it's all about consumer choice, but we need information to make smart choices as consumers. And in Bolivia, it's not only the problem of consumers, but also the government. We don't have this debate set at all. Nobody is talking about this in Bolivia. So some activists are alone saying crazy things that nobody understands. So I guess really we don't have any information about what's going on. So we cannot make smart decisions, and even we cannot develop any public policy with information that we don't have. So I would like to, for all of us, understand that we here are talking about some things that we understand, but the whole rest of the world, even especially the people who are not connected, they don't understand this discussion.
Thank you. We have to keep tweeting, not blogging. Caroline.
Yeah, sure. And I think we won't be able to read the tweet questions right now. Let's go back to the line.
Thank you. I'm Alison Gilwell from Research ICT Africa. We collect tens of thousands of product prices across Africa every quarter. And I must re-emphasize how bizarre it is that we've spent all this time over so many months and years now on different projects looking at zero rating. Zero rating is just one of multiple access options, bundles and services that are offered. People use zero rating as part of multiple access entry points. The poor have multiple strategies. They move from a zero rated product in order to use the service onto public Wi-Fi. They go to school, etc. The idea that people are stuck on zero rated services that, as we found, make up a tiny percentage of the product is just really, really tiny. It's really, ridiculous. The other question I just wanted to raise was the issues of competition. We keep hearing that it's anti-competitive. What is anti-competitive? The issues of big platforms being dominant in the market and keeping out small new entrants in markets applies to non-zero rated products as well. So the issue for small players is that it's actually pro-competitive. For small telcos, it's actually pro-competitive. So just to say that people are using multiple strategies, they're accessing the net in various ways, and if the poor are, if there's some breach of net neutrality at some point, let the poor decide. Put everything out there and let them make the choice. Thank you.
Okay, we have the online participant, and I think we can close the queues here, huh?
Yeah,
because we have about 10 people. Please be sharp and up to the point. Ginger.
Thank you very much. We have a comment from India. Zero rating is one of the ways to increase internet access and adoption. Our approach should not be to shut down zero rating, but to improve it. In case any competitive issue comes up, it should go to Competition Commission. Moreover, nothing stops anyone from providing services for free for increasing internet reach amongst the unconnected people. So why haven't they done so? Thank you.
Please, no, actually it's your line, Vlada.
Okay, my turn again. Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Jorge Vargas. I work for the Wikimedia Foundation. I do partnerships and policy and work for the program Wikipedia Zero. I think that IGF this year has shown us that zero rating in itself is not negative, but there are benefits to it. And we strongly believe that there is a positive way and responsible way to do zero rating. Our approach to it was developing operating principles by means of which we think that we are supporting competition and net neutrality, yet providing our mission, which is serving an underserved community that cannot access the sum of all knowledge because of affordability barriers. We have an open invitation for all of the interest stakeholders to develop these operating principles or responsible principles by means of which we can continue to zero rate and provide access to fundamental services such as Wikipedia, yet protect competition and net neutrality. An example for this has been Chile, where in 2014, the Subtel regulator issued a circular banning free social media such as Facebook and WhatsApp tied to a commercial bundle. However, after a clarification, we were able to see how services such as Wikipedia were not covered by that regulation. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolina.
Please go ahead.
Okay. George Sadowski, ICANN. I like Prakash's response to the harms and benefits question. He said it depends, and he's absolutely right. And the reason he's right is that zero rating is a heterogeneous collection of all kinds of techniques to create certain kinds of results for companies that are involved in it. We have a goal. It's to get as many people on the internet as we can. Zero rating is a way of doing that, but we have to disaggregate it and look for subsidies, patterns of subsidies that are common and that contribute toward that goal. And so I'd suggest that looking through the lens of subsidies and relying upon competition law and government practices in incenting behavior as well as corporate practices, that we're better off understanding zero rating in that context rather than as a homogeneous concept about which we can say really very little in general. Thank you.
Please go ahead on the other line.
Yeah, Steve Zeltzer from LaborNet, APC, and LaborTech.net. I think here the question of zero this or zero that is really ludicrous, because we could have municipal Wi-Fi for all people of the entire world. We have the resources to put everyone online. But that has been blocked. That's the reality. That has been blocked by the telecom companies who want their revenue stream to continue. They prevent Wi-Fi in San Francisco, where we're from, because it would threaten their revenue. I think the ideology that's being debated here really is privatization. Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook are for privatizing not only the internet, but education, public education in the United States and around the world. These are issues for the public, not just for these private corporations to decide. And I think that Facebook has banned sites in the United States, civil sites, not violent, and they've done that unilaterally without any debate, any discussion. They have become an octopus making the decisions about what is valuable, what isn't valuable. I think that has to be challenged on an international level. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we are doing a live coverage of data mining of the words. At the moment we are tweeting. It will be interesting to also check the applauses.
Going back to the line, go ahead. I'm going to cut you, Vlad.
My name is Boni Mtengwa.
Your time.
I'm from Zimbabwe, the telecommunications regulator. I just have a question with the issue of zero rating, because in Africa, what's driving our internet usage is social media. And also with the introduction of WhatsApp and Facebook calling and the likes, revenues are going down for operators, and some of them have been closing. So I need to know now if there's been a research that has been done to see the impact of zero rating on these social media services, now that these are actually the ones that are now driving the telecommunications sector. Now that they are coming now at being zero rated, whereby our operators are being forced obviously by these big companies to offer these services at a free of charge or at a very, very low cost. Is somebody actually trying to monitor our ability to develop our own local content, which will be cheaper, because obviously Facebook has got a lot of users and everybody is going there because they are where they will find the people. And now it's zero rated, it's free. How are we going to have our own local content being competitive against these social media which are coming from multinational companies?
Thank you.
My name is Mwendwa Kibuva, an ISOC ambassador and a Google policy fellow at Strathmore University in Nairobi, Kenya. Zero rating infringes on fundamental human rights by providing a malnutritioned internet while users need a balanced diet internet. It may be a conspiracy to keep developing countries in the darkness of the information age. If you are genuine and have tons of money and want to help the community, zero rate everything. Don't just zero rate one website. The people without access to the internet don't need access to one website. They need access to the entire internet. And please don't give us a wrong definition of the internet, because we know the internet means the entire interconnected computers. Those who are breaking net neutrality rules are trying to play God. They think without them, the poor cannot access internet. They are wrong. And just remember, if you are not paying for the service, then you are the product. Thank you.
That quote, sorry folks, we need to move. That quote is pretty good tweet. Go ahead.
Hello, that's really, really awesome. I don't think I can add anything much more from what my Zimbabwean colleague and my Kenyan colleagues have talked about this. There are other solutions to connecting the next billion online. We have to look at the long term. Zero rating is a short term fix. We need to develop infrastructure. We need to look at the long term solutions. What is needed in order for this not just to be online for a short time and then that disconnected from being online. I just wanted to echo their sentiments. They've preempted whatever I wanted to say. Thank you very much. Ephraim, for the record, my name is Ephraim Kenyanito from Kenya. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ephraim. Back to your side.
Good afternoon, I'm Veridiana from Intervozes, Brazil. I would like to hear from the panelists about an assumption that is currently in the zero rating defenders' arguments. Is this zero rating a part of the path for affordable and universal internet access? In my understanding, it's not. Experiences has shown that zero rating increased data caps prices and market verticalization. Zero rating only makes sense in a disconnected world. To overcome this, who pays the bill are the public policies and companies' investments within these policies. I agree with Eduardo Bertoni and all the floor claims. Let's discuss with this interest, internet access policies. And regarding Marco Civil, I also agree with Bertoni, what Bertoni said, that treating data package in an economic way is incompatible with zero rating. This is what's written in Marco Civil Article 9. And emergency services and technical requirements are not exceptions that can be applied to this case. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Again, we are over, but we are going to go over a little bit because we've had some great interventions. I want to go back to our 4 final experts for some quick responses.
So, Pepper, not the last one in line here.
Oh,
We
there
are
was
closing.
somebody else. Oh, I'm
It's
sorry.
just one. He
One
was
more.
here, and
Oh,
then
I
it's closed.
I thought you had closed the line. I apologize. Please, go
I
ahead.
had. He was the last one. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm Gabriel from Brazil. My question is based on democracy, you know, because if it's not for the people that the internet works, I don't know for who it is. And in spite of that, I think most of the people spend their time when internet, in Facebook, WhatsApp, or social media anyways. And these companies, they bank zero rating. So how can we convince population that zero rating is something bad for it, that's not good for the internet, when they kind of like using the social media that banks zero rating? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to you, Pepper.
Thank you very much. Okay, and Gabriel, we actually chatted yesterday, and he had some great comments on our session yesterday on connecting the next billion. So thank you, and I apologize for not having seen you over there because of the lights. So let's go back to our final 4 experts for just last quick interventions, and then we're going to have a close. The close, by the way, will be in Portuguese, but if you don't have earphones, that's okay because of the text. The scrolling captioning will be in English. So please, Pranesh, we'll start with you. No. I'm sorry. Yes. Final wrap-up comments. The same order that we had the presenters, the experts. So do it, sort of pretty quick. Thanks.
Very briefly, there are great things at stake here, including democratic principles. So we must make sure that we can't just take a knee-jerk response, that regulatory responses to this must be carefully calibrated, that there are many possibilities between just banning something and allowing it without any regulation at all. We have to carefully consider those. So my appeal to all those who want to ban all forms of zero rating is, 1, to think about what exactly you want to ban, whether it's specific kinds of zero rating practices or anything that I initially defined as zero rating first, and secondly, what kind of regulatory response makes sense in your particular market conditions, because not all of them have the same effect.
Thank you. Anya.
Thank you. I think what a lot of the interventions from the floor in this section especially raised are really questions about what is the vision of the internet that we have and what is the vision of our societies that we have. And clearly for users, zero rating practices as they are being proposed cause enormous anxiety around exactly these things. And a lot of the debates about zero rating do not seem to take those anxieties into account at all. I think that's about the opposite of a good way to build trust and something that we really should shy away from. I think there is good reason for these anxieties, as I mentioned earlier. Allison's point that it's bizarre that we spend so much time on zero rating, but at the same time, if it's such an important part of the market, then why is it that Facebook sends our prime minister to their head office, pays for 50 journalists to fly over, makes sure that during the duration of the prime minister's office, for every single day, we see across Indian media news coverage of the point that free basics will connect people to the internet. So clearly, there are real issues there, and I do think they need to be addressed. On the point of regulation versus incentives, I think there is perhaps some openness. If we incentivize other options more, perhaps banning is not needed. But we don't see that incentivizing happening in all countries. Thank you.
Thank you. Belinda.
Thank you. I'd just like to pick up on the point about consumer choice, which was directed at GSMA. The question came from Bolivia, saying that consumers there don't understand the whole concept of zero rating services, and that may well be the case. But what I would say in those circumstances is that those consumers need to have the opportunity to understand what is being offered through these services, and that a ban on these practices before they've even been given a chance to be experimented with and to be innovated would be doing harm to these consumers rather than benefiting them. Thank you.
Thank you. And last word, Christopher, before I close.
This debate is an example of how dynamic the internet really is. I searched the website for IGF 2013. The words zero rating do not appear. And this is a fantastic, and the way it's appearing in terms of political organizations, both through SMS and social media, in terms of organizing, applying for education is fantastic. I think in some ways, some of the questions set up a false choice. We shouldn't try zero rating or mesh networking or municipal Wi-Fi. We should try all of them. And in a real sense, there are some challenges. There's some questions about zero rating. Is it going to be the right thing in every place? We don't know. I live in a city where we tried municipal Wi-Fi. It was not successful. That doesn't mean we can't learn from that and do better, but we need to be pushing, instead of trying to decide which one to pull, we need to figure out how to pursue these different ways. But overall, in the end, we must sure we focus on consumers and what helps them. Many times this discussion gets to be very abstract about principles, and that in fact really we should focus on what consumers want and how we provide them the service they need.
Thank you, Christopher. We're going to have our close from our opening chair, who's going to try to pull all of this together. But right before we do that, I want to thank both Vladimir and Carolina, who had to leave because they're moderating sessions right at 4 o'clock, so they had to leave, and I want to thank them very much. And real big thanks goes to Susan Chalmers, who put all of this together. It was not easy. It's a great group. It's an amazing group of people. And so, Susan, thank you very, very, very much.
I will be speaking Portuguese. Okay. Bom, muito obrigado.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for attending this session of IGF 2015. Thank you, Mr. Pepper, for your excellent moderation. Thank you for the audience. And thank you for those who participated via the internet. It's such an important topic, and it's been a reason for discussion in all internet fora around the world. I'd also like to thank Susan. I echo the compliments to Susan for the organization of this event. I'd like to thank the participants for the high-level discussion and for the questions. On behalf of CGR, I would like to close this panel of IGF 2015. Thank you very much.